we went back, and I'll just show you a couple of pictures of the farm, just to show the guys there with me and had to work with me and that. So you've got the next group up there for us, please. Oh, not very clear, that one. That's a peanut planter, planting peanuts. And we did acres and acres of them. This is a group of guys that I was working for, about 11 or 12 of them, I think it was. And they were Tongan people, naturally, as you can see. And you could not necessarily, I'm not putting them down by saying this, but you could not necessarily rely on them that much. I'd send them down with the tractor to plough a paddock up. About 11 o'clock I went down to see how they were going. And I was sitting down under the coconut tree. And I said, what happened? What happened? Oh, the tractor is muddy. The tractor's died. Why didn't you come back up to the workshop and see me and let me know what's going on? So they're sitting down. They were sitting down having an umu. An umu is their food that they cook in the ground, so they have to cook something. And they hadn't had breakfast this morning, so that was most important, to have something to eat. So I didn't reprimand them too much. But I've got lots and lots of stories like that where you could not rely on them to be there and do the job like normal. We tried hard to get 8 hours a day at them, but it didn't happen so much. But I don't put them down. It's their way of life. They're lovely people. And that's so. Anyway, after being up at here in Kingaroy, we headed back home that day after we'd been here with Norm. On the way home, it was raining all the way back to Murwillumbah. To Murwillumbah. No, it must have been to Melbourne. We were going back to Melbourne, weren't we? Yeah, going back to Melbourne because that's where we were based at the time. And it rained and rained and rained, and we got down as far as Cock Harbour. We slept there that night, and then the next day, we on the road home, we actually had a bad car accident, a really bad car accident. And I was in hospital a fair bit with my leg being broken in a couple of places. Kneecap was removed. I'm not telling you these stories to make you feel sorry, but let you understand what God does for you sometimes. Anyway, because of that, we were delayed from going to take up the job. We were going to be at least 5 months later because I had a plaster right up my leg and we couldn't go. They badly wanted us to go still, kept pestering us about where we were up to, and basically they waited for us. So in May or June, May it might have been, we went out there and we actually was okay to start the job. We went to Melbourne, from Melbourne to Tonga in the middle of the summer over there, or the hot weather, and Melbourne was freezing cold at the time. We talk about these stories because it's not what we've done. We've done a lot of things in our lives, and a lot of things not always what we'd like to, should have done. But somebody says a rolling stone never gathers any moss. Depends what you call moss. We gather experience. We gather trust in God, where we can go. And how can we trust God where we can go? We are remembering the past. We can look back in the past and know that God cares about us and He lead us in the future. That's basically the way we have to trust Him, because we can't do it on our own. No one in this earth has an easy life. Nobody has 100% good life. And all of you have probably got stories, similar sort of stories, where you've been wrecked by the devil, and we say the devil's doing it, but it's not necessarily. The world we live in is the thing that's going to drag us down sometimes, and if we don't have faith in God, that He can pull us through. The devil tries to stop us from our plans, and I think he was trying to stop us from going to Tonga at the time. And that's anyway, this is my part of the story first up. My story, his story, is something that is very important to us, because it's not only just our story, it's God using us and his story. So Robin's going to take over now. She's got a testimony now of what happened when we arrived in Tonga. Right there.
I'm going to read a little bit from a book that I published with Nathan Brown, mainly because I have a few gaps at times. My story got published in the book by Nathan Brown, who was at the Science Publishing Company. So I'm going to read a little bit of that so I have it chronically right. We had this mission service within the Adventist Church, challenged us, and we prayerfully put it before God, and it came a call to Beulah College in Tonga. Now, Beulah College is a secondary school, boarding school, and there they had 900 acres or 400 hectares of red, beautiful red soil like you've got here in Kingaroy. And it already had 5 established industries, a dairy and a pasteurisation plant, crops and vanilla. Vanilla is an orchid, and they actually self-pollinate with a paintbrush to get the vanilla pods. A mechanical workshop and a huge potential for commercial cash cropping. It was an exciting challenge. Using part of our pre-embarkation leave, like Heck suggested, we visited Kingaroy and came up to see Norm Ford. Returning through the south through Nabiac, a northbound vehicle veered onto our lane. There was no chance to avoid the head-on collision, and miraculously we survived. Ambulance to Taree. Heck sustained multiple leg, chest and facial injuries, and I was unconscious with suspected fractures. I was in my first trimester of pregnancy, and amazingly I did not miscarry. After rehabilitation in Melbourne, it was months before medical clearance, and now came another decision. Heck felt responsible to this appointment, but I was now 8 months pregnant. I had midwifery experience, I was a midwife, but I had a nursing friend on the Beulah campus, and my doctor's consent to travel, so we decided to fly to Tonga. When we were in Tonga, on Beulah College, I awoke one night startled and alarmed. I'd had a dream. I would have a caesarean section. It was in the early hours of the morning, like 3 a.m. Heck and I knelt down and prayed for God's protection. I fully trusted God with my life, and an unexplained peace came over me, for God had reassured me of his care. A few nights later, the labour came, frequent and intense. The hospital appeared adequate, but it was not ideal. They were out of hospital linen, so I was bedded on newspaper. The labour ward was busy, so for 14 excruciating hours, I received no medical attention at all. I was aware of so much that could have gone wrong, but I had God's hand over me. Now, hospital is very, very much in the Nuku'alofa in Tonga. Tongatapu is the biggest island. It's about 40 kilometres by 9. But there's 3 other islands that make up the Kingdom of Tonga. And the king there is a feudal system. They have a king and nobles, and then the common people. Now, the common people can never acquire property. So most of them actually leave Tonga and go to New Zealand or Australia. It's only the nobles and the king that own property. And Beulah College is actually rented to the Australian division by a noble, an Adventist noble. So when I went to the hospital, a lot of the people there don't have cars, so they'd walk to the hospital to visit. So they bring their food with them, and there was many a time I had a pig or a dog under my bed in the hospital ward. And I keep thinking I'm above all the germs, but I was just very, very anxious that I was going to just stay there and take whatever God intended. About 15 minutes after I'd gone through this ordeal with my pregnancy, my doctor returned, and I've got a bit of a sense of humour. His name was Dr. Numatolo, which meant 3 coconuts. And he stood at the door and shook his head and just walked off. He never even came and saw me. The next thing there was a Australian doctor came in, and he came to my bedside and he said, "I'm Dr. Bob Mackey from Crown Street in Sydney, the top obstetric hospital in all of Sydney. He lectured medical students, he lectured midwives. He was one of the best obstetricians in Sydney." He said, "I want to do a caesarean section on you." And so I said, "Yes, I understand." I was in God's safe haven, and it touched me that a Tongan nurse prayed with me before I went under general anaesthetic. For I delivered a beautiful baby daughter, and we named her Kelly. Hours later, this doctor came to my bedside, and he sat in silence, and tears were running down his face. "I don't know why I am here," he said. "I found myself on a plane going to Tonga." I said, "You're an answer to prayer," and I told him of my prayer. And then he related to me that he had a paediatrician and an anaesthetist. They got off the only other flight into Tonga for that day, and they had come in from the Philippines. And so he had that paediatrician and that anaesthetist to assist him in theatre and deliver me. It impacted him deeply, and I will tell you this now. He said 20 minutes later you and your baby would have been both dead. And you know, I believe that. I totally believe that. This man then went back to Australia, and you wouldn't believe it, but he went through the ward and he met up with a girl that I'd done general nursing with at the Sand. And he said, "I've had the most incredible experience. I've just delivered a lady out in Tonga." And she said, "Yes, that's my girlfriend." He was aghast. He just could not get over God's hand in his life. I could tell it impacted him deeply. It was an emotional moment. Anyway, Dr. Mackey had concerns about leaving me in the hospital, and he advised he was going to discharge me the next day. I was pleased to be home, but with it came the responsibilities of a new baby. The next day I had a massive hemorrhage. Heck came in to have a shower from his work, and I flooded the floor with blood. I was in hemorrhaging. There's no way that I could go back to the hospital and have a blood transfusion. They have a different blood type to us, even though they're universal donors, so I have a different blood type. So I said to Heck, "I'm just going to lay on my bed. You just come back every couple of hours and check Kelly, bottle feed her and change her, and I'll just lay in my bed." I lay in my bed for 4 days, extreme pain. And I said to him finally, he said, "What are we going to do?" And I said, "Darling, just go into town, see if you can get me some grape juice." And he immediately said, "Where am I going to find grape juice in Tonga?" Because everything depended on shipping. But you know what? He returned with 12 bottles of grape juice. The lids were rusted on the top, and there on the mildewed label was the name Sanitarium. How good is gold? So I drank that grape juice, and then I was able to get back, and in 4 days' time I was able then to be a bit more accepting. I want to thank God so much for his care over me. Anyway, we were still at home, and we got a note from the hospital saying that our daughter was illegitimate. They had marked it on a piece of paper they gave me, legitimate or illegitimate. I'd been annoyed because they'd marked illegitimate. They wouldn't accept her as a Tongan. So we had to go to an Australian embassy in Fiji So we had to get on a plane and take Kelly out of Tonga because otherwise they would have expelled her. And then in the Fiji, the beautiful people there even opened on Sunday for us to go and put Kelly on my passport so we could get her back into Tonga. And you know, when you see that sort of thing, you know that God's definitely there with you. And then as we went back home, we had a couple of weeks at home, and the next thing during the night, we had a magnitude 7.5 earthquake in Tonga. Now, Tongatapu is a pretty flat island, and so they were pretty scared. The Australasian Division were quite scared. They actually rang us to tell us to come home to Australia. But I remember getting out of bed, and I probably went from about here to over there to get my baby. Kelly was in a cradle, swinging, and I had that many stops and thrown to the ground at least 6 times because all our wedding gifts in our vanity cabinet all smashed on the ground in that earthquake, 7.5, and they were concerned about the tsunami coming. But you know what? When you leave yourself in the care of God, He cares for you, there's no question about that. And I know I'm alive today because of God's hand in my life, just in that few chapters of life in God's leading. And I want to quote for you from Isaiah 46 verse 4. I will be your God throughout your lifetime, until your hair is white with age. I made you, I will care for you, I will carry you and save you. And He did all of that. He's a marvellous God. Thank you.
A few pictures there of the miracle baby.
Tongan people are lovely. They said she's a lovely baby, but she's the wrong colour.
That's the next one. I'm not sure whether we got time for more talk. 10 minutes only. That's not enough. I've often said, all what we've done in life, we should be 100-year-old. And of course, as I said before, rolling stone gathers no moss, and so therefore the moss we did gather is experience and trust in God. And that's it. My story, his story was God's story. And I'm not sure whether we've got time to tell a story about why we came to Tonga, because that was the original plan that Lethan gave me, to tell the story why we come to Tonga. It's a little bit of a lengthy story, and I may get through it without breaking down, but we've had... Sorry, to Nanango or Kingaroy, why we came to Kingaroy, that's right, why we came to Kingaroy, because that was been the question. Why did you come to this place up here? We love this place, it's beautiful. And that, but we came here because we felt that God wanted us here. And what started us to come, and I'll try and tell the story without looking at my notes, because I don't follow my notes very well sometimes. I should have written it out in a story form. We had ups and downs. We lived in Murwillumbah for 35 years. We brought up our kids there, at the school there. Fantastic blessing to us all, to what happened there. And that, but things didn't always go as planned. And as life went on, sometimes it got pretty tough. And one particular incident that I can refer to, in 2006, I had a bad mower accident and wrecked my leg. And I was in hospital for 8 weeks. And because of that, we couldn't run our business properly. We had at the time, I'm running a farm as well as a business at the time. And so we struggled a fair bit to keep going. So we ended up and had to sell the business. At the same year, 2006, at the end of that year, Robin had a car accident. And basically, affected her quite considerably with brain injury and that type of thing, and she's noticed ever since that she struggles with all that all the time. And that, so basically that was a rot setting in type of thing that pulled us down, and we ended up and had to sell the business and sell the farm later. We had a sugarcane farm of 84 acres. I could still keep working, but financially we couldn't keep going. And of course, makes things worse, at the beginning of last year, not last year, the year before now, because we're now in 24, in 2022, we had a big flood. And the big flood was really, really affected things quite considerably around the place. I'll just show you a couple of pictures of it. We had water views on the farm. And there was not 1 square metre that did not have water over it in the farm. Went right through the workshop, right through our farm area there. There's the workshop get trashed. And we struggled to come good after that. And that's why I've got this emotional issue going on since, basically, because before that I was okay to stand up and talk like this, but after drums we had over that flood and everything like that wrecked us so much that we had to do something about it. At the time, we thought, what are we going to do? We prayed about it heaps. We tried to sort out what we were going to do. We were renting the farm back off the guy who bought it. He was a fantastic landlord, and he wanted us to look after and maintain the farm, the house block, which we did. But after that, he ended up and sold it. He didn't want to sell it. Somebody pushed him to sell it to them, and when he sold it, our lease was terminated by the end of that year. So the end of 22, we had to get out. What are we going to do? Because of the effect of the flood, you'd think the value of housing would be cheap enough for us to afford to buy. No, it was not. About over a quarter of the houses were uninhabitable after the flood. Because of that, the price all went up so high that you had to pay $650, $700 for rent for an ordinary house. It could be flood prone even. And so I said something, talked it over to our kids, and they said, you can't do that, you can't do that. You can't just burn money up like that, it's no good at all. So basically we started looking around where we could leave. The kids didn't want us to go, but they told us we had to go because that they could look after us as well. We had our daughter living with us at the time when the flood came. She had to find a place to live too because she had her kids in school down there, which she really appreciated, you know. And so basically we started getting out, getting on Domain, on the internet, hunting them all up where we could buy properties. Basically, we were looking for a place that had a good church, and we believe this is a good church. We had to have a hospital because we're old people now. We had to have at least a decent shopping centre and places like that, and Kingaroy has all of that for us. And that, so we started looking all over the place. We were up at Mergen, we were all over at Gympie, everywhere like that, and we finally decided this was the place to be. And the property we've got down at Nango now, 5 acres, with a reasonable little house on it we love living in. We bought that for probably a quarter of the price for the same thing that we had if we stayed back in Murwillumbah. 1.2, 1.3 million down there for that same property. And that's so basically, what else can you do? And all I'm telling you this story for, not for you people to feel sorry for us for what was happened in our lives, but to know that God still cares about us and we're here for a reason, to be here. And we're devoted to being here at this church and doing what we can to help build this church up and to be a light in this community. And that's seriously where we're at and why we're here. And we can only thank God. And I've got a few texts here to encourage everybody, because everybody comes through trials and things and how the devil works on us. Sometimes we blame the devil for what he does to us, but it's not always the devil doing it. It's God allowing it to us. He wants to change our life where we need to go. And he changed our direction in life. We don't know. I've got a couple of little quotes here that I'd like to read here. How to trust God when everything is going wrong. God is always there for us, even when things are going wrong. He can help us to find strength and we feel like we can go on. He can give us hope when everything seems hopeless. However, life is full of challenges. We face difficulties every day, and sometimes it feels like everything is going wrong. We all have that situation sometimes, don't we? We've all been through these situations. During these tough times, it's hard to trust God and believe he has a plan for us. But even when things are at the worst, we can rely on God to help us through. And that happens. That shows that experience. We wait, we trust God, and remember that God loves us. You can trust him to sustain, provide for you, and be with you even in the midst of your hardship. Jesus guarantees his followers that Jesus guarantees his fellow followers that they would face hard times, and that's where we need him to support us. And there's another little one I've got here, a little quote I've got here, and a little thought here, just a thought. You can fully enjoy a swing. You won't fully enjoy a swing unless you raise your feet from the ground. So if you're sitting on the swing, you can't enjoy it, can you? You're on the ground. You won't fully enjoy a boat ride unless you remove the rope knot from the riverbank. Never limit yourself when it comes to trusting God. It's this story we have, it's only a small amount of what has happened in our lives. And so we're looking forward to hearing the rest of the people who are presenting in the next few weeks about their story, because everybody's got a story to tell somewhere along the line. And we can thank God that he helped us through these stories, help us get through these bad times, because we would not be here today if we couldn't trust God for everything we had to do. So that's our story there. And that I felt a little bit that Lethan cheated me a bit. I shouldn't say the pastor can cheat you, but he gave me the impression we only had 10 minutes. The next thing I saw my name up there, I'm not going to take the church service. And basically we've worked our way through it now. He's not here to listen to us, so I can talk about him if I want to. Thank you. We've got the last hymn now we're going to sing, Will Your Anchor Hold? And that's there for a reason. Will your anchor hold? Because you need to be strong to be able to handle these trials in life. And when you sing this song, take notice of the words that are there, and that can take them right into our own hearts and where God can lead us and guide us. I had a whole lot of Bible text to do, but we go forever and we can't take them all. So we'll stop now and we'll have a song now. Thank you for listening to our story.
Let's